takes place during the 90s. It's just that Tommy was born in he was born in 1989, and the show takes place. The first episode, I think, was 1990. So I don't know why I said 1980, but
I was like, wait a minute, that show hasn't been on that long. But yeah.
Yeah. It is the Super Clash podcast, a podcast about shorter games. It is episode 74. I am tired, and your host, Kale.
Hello,
Wow.
tired Kale. I am equally tired, Connor.
What a week it's been, man.
Yeah, it's been hell for me. The past 2 weeks have, really.
Yeah, you having to get a new car, and then the dealership possibly having some fraudulent activity involving you.
Yeah, they told us about a warranty, and they gave us one price for the warranty, and we're like, okay, cool. And they were going through all the things that this warranty included. Little did we know, it did not include all those additional things. They were slowly tacking additional charges on as they're talking through them without telling us they were putting additional charges on. So I had to go up to the dealership when I found out that there was like almost $10,000 more than I ever agreed to pay on the car. And I went in there and I was like, we need to fix this now. Like, I was very pissed at this guy, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I guess it's all my fault. You know, I thought you knew that these were all different charges. And I'm like, well, did you tell me it was? And he's like, well, didn't I show you this brochure thing here? And I was like, no, you didn't. All that we did was on the tablet, and you were walking me through what the warranty covered. He's like, oh, well, it was late and blah, 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 that kind of shit.
What do you mean it was late?
Yeah, because we didn't
'cause
finish the transaction till after close. But that's on them. That's not on me.
Like, oh, it's late, so therefore I'm not going to tell you about these very, very expensive fees that you had no choice but to agree to because you didn't realize it costed you anything.
Yeah. Long story short, we got about half of them refunded back to us, and then the other half, they're like, oh, we can't really take those away. It's part of the bundle with the car now, blah, blah, blah. But I had already reached out to the manufacturer, which was Hyundai. We bought a Hyundai. And I called their customer support line to them directly. I was like, this dealership has done these things. They jacked up the price this much. Does this seem right to you? And they're like, no, we're going to create a case with our sales fraud department, and we'll investigate that dealership and get back to you on Monday. So
I anxiously await what the news is going to be.
Oh, yeah. I hope we can recover even more of the additional money we didn't expect to spend on it. Because I told the guy flat out at the dealership, I was like, if we were going to pay $10,000 more, we would have just got a better car.
Mm-hmm.
I would have just bought something even nicer if I wanted to drop that much. Because I said, the car isn't worth that much. He's like, well, it's not the car that's worth that much. But I said, but you rolled it into the entire price of the car, so it is saying the car is worth that much. He's like, well, you pay insurance over time, and, you're probably paying blah, blah, blah amount of insurance in a year. Do you count that as part of the car? And I'm like, no. But
wow, what a great straw man.
Yeah. He was trying to make him left and right, but I was just shooting him down left and right because I was just like, because one of the things I loved how when he kept trying to change the subject, so he's like, so how's the car treating you? And my response, I'm not even exaggerating, I was like, I think we're a little beyond that right now, aren't we? And he goes, oh yeah, fair enough. And it's like the dude knew I was pissed. Like, I immediately just told him, let's go to your office right now. When we got there, I was like, we need to talk about this. So, yeah. And the sad thing is, it was not the salesperson's fault. Because all of this stuff that happened was stuff the manager added on.
Yeah, kind of like when it's, because I haven't bought a car in years. So, when you buy a car, you agree to the salesperson takes you to the manager. That's where you fill out, the paperwork.
Yes.
That's where you get, the gap insurance, the affidavit.
Yeah, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had no problem with the salesperson. The salesperson was perfectly fine. In fact, if we had just cut the manager out of the equation and just finalized the transaction there, I would have had a positive experience. I would have had no issues. I would have went home happy and stayed happy. But it was this douche trying to squeeze every little penny out. And, he's like, well, I can take these off. I get paid the same no matter what. And I'm just like, fuck you, man. I don't care how much you get paid. I don't care. It's not. Why would you even bring that up? Like, you think I'm gonna feel
weird response?
You think I'm gonna feel bad because I thought maybe you were losing money by giving us our money back on this? No, I don't feel bad because you tried to be a scammer.
Mm-hmm.
And
I hope that dude gets fired.
Yeah. The funny thing is, he just got promoted to manager.
Well, good. I hope he gets fired.
Yeah, me too.
Because especially if they can prove that he knowingly did this without telling you.
Yeah.
That like.
And he asked me, like, what could I have done differently? And I was like, you could have given us a cost breakdown like I'm asking you for now, and went through, this thing costs this much and gives you these things. Instead of just telling us all the things that is covered, but then slipping additional charges on for each thing, and then not showing us. He didn't even show us the sheet. He's just like, oh, yeah, you want all these things to be covered with the warranty? And I was like, assuming it was the warranty we initially talked about. And I was like, yeah. And so I signed for it. But the fucker, like, snuck it all in. I think that's why he didn't fight me on it either. And, get this. They basically doxed me, too. And admitted fault to it as well. So I'm going to bring that up with the fraud agent, too, on Monday. They took pictures of our car when they got it in, which is fine. They do that when they get new cars and trade in, because we were trading in our old car. And they took those pictures, and instead of cleaning the car and then taking professional photos to post to sell the car, they used those photos, which had our license plate and some of our personal belongings in the car. And people can look up, a license plate or whatever.
Right.
And see who previously owned that car. And it's like, fuck you, man. Like, why? And I told him that, and he's like, oh, we have a new, what is it? A new shop manager or something like that. A new so-and-so, and he doesn't really know the process yet. I'll talk to him about it. And he's like, but that's against our company policy to do that. And I'm like,
well, it's on the website.
And they spelled my name wrong on all the paperwork. So if I really, really, really wanted to split some hairs, like if they were not going to budge or give me any money back, I'd be like, that's not my name on that paperwork. And I'd be like, if I take this to court, you're fucked, bro. Like, because A, you doxed me. B, you spelled my name wrong on all the paperwork. So legally, that's not me. And C, you put all this other scam shit, and you're now your dealership's being investigated for sales fraud. So congratulations, buddy. You done fucked up.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
Yeah. So sorry, I went on a little bit of a passionate
it's all
tirade
good. I mean,
there.
It's been like this had to happen like over the course of a week or at least 3 days. I can't like Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, it was over the course of like a week and a half. We did all this stuff, but yeah.
Fuck.
That's why the really sad thing is, I probably played 50% to 75% of the game we're going to talk about today. I played it today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
because I just didn't have time with everything else going on.
You just can't catch a break, man.
No, I need a nap.
You need more than a nap.
I need some Valium.
But on a lighter note, my wife and I, we did finally finish Rent a Girlfriend.
Nice.
And Sumi is slowly creeping to like almost best girl.
I know.
Like Ruka and Sumi are like at equal level.
I know.
The shit that Sumi did for not Kazuma, Kazuya's birthday was absolutely adorable. I was just
I know. She's like so sweet, and like she tries like so hard, and I like how even it seems like she's trying to like, as much as I don't want him to end up with Chizuru, she's like doing her best to like try to make that work out, and that's why she has a place in my waifu cabinet.
Yeah.
She's up there with Ruka.
two best girls.
Exactly.
Like, and not to say like Chizuru is fine.
Chizuru's fine.
She's that nothing. She's not bad, but she's not great. She's fine. Like every scene she's in, she's passable. Like I'm engaged enough with whatever scene she's in. But when it comes to Sumi or Ruka, I'm like all in. Let's do this.
I think so. For me, like Sumi and Ruka are like A tier, and then Chizuru's like B tier, maybe even B plus. She's up there, right? And then Mami-chan is F tier. She is F tier.
What's worse than F? E?
I guess. And then the new girl though that they introduced in the manga, who probably will be on the next season of the anime if they do another season, she's pretty high up there. I'd say so far for me, she's sitting at like C tier, but she's moving her ways up the ranks. Because Sumi didn't start out as an A tier, but she moved herself up them ranks.
Sumi started off as a B tier though. She was kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate. I really gotta get the Rent a Girlfriend mangas. So it's just I wish our Barnes and Noble didn't suck.
Oh yeah, ours is poo poo garbo.
Like there's some good selections, but every once in a while you'll get a good one. But we also we're caught up at least in the English dub with Spy Family, and it's getting really good. It's to the point where like the dogs are becoming involved.
Okay.
And the episode we ended on is when one of the dogs hopped towards Twilight and he had his gun drawn towards it, and that's when the credits rolled. And my wife was like, this show really needs an edition for Does the Dog Die? That website. And I kind of looked through the manga and I let her know what the result is, and so
yeah, I know the result because
Mm-hmm.
we've watched the episode after that, but I still think as far as like currently airing with the sub, we're 2 weeks behind because we kind of got derailed off of anime and started watching Better Call Saul.
Right.
Because I started really getting in the mood to watch Better Call Saul. I kept seeing clips on like YouTube Shorts and stuff, and I was like, man, because I stopped after like season 3, and there's like 6 seasons now, and I got my wife to watch Breaking Bad with me, and she ended up loving it. So I'm like, we need to watch Better Call Saul, and like it's taken me years to get her to say yes to it, but now that she's watching it, I think she's invested, and we're almost done with season 2, and then we'll go on past that. So I'm excited.
Nice. I've been seeing Breaking Bad shorts on YouTube, and I've been kind of itching for another watch through of that.
It's a good show. I've watched through it twice. I've seen El Camino once, and then as I said, I've only watched half of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. So, yeah.
Nice. So I have one more question that we can kind of talk about before we kind of dive into this. Have you noticed what is up with all of the remakes of games lately? Have you noticed that? Because you have it reminds me of the early 2000s where every single movie coming out was a remake of something.
Yeah.
We got I don't really know if you want to count this, but we got the remake of Last of Us Part 1. We're getting a remake of the first Horizon for some godforsaken reason.
Remake of Dead Space.
It's now Silent Hill 2. We're getting a remake of the first Witcher.
Oh, really?
Which is something like I wouldn't mind, because I think the first Witcher was it was kind of janky coming out. So if they were to reintroduce the first Witcher with like modern controls and modern graphics, it could actually work out. But I don't know, man. I don't know what is up with all of these fucking remakes. And they're remaking System Shock 2, I think. It's either the first or, I think it's the first one.
I think it's just studios aren't willing to take a risk. They're like, this game was successful before. It's almost certain to make us money. So let's just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like that mindset, especially when a game is only like one generation old. I hate that shit with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as I love The Last of Us, I did not think that Last of Us 1 needed a remake because we got a remaster on the PS4 only one generation ago. Same thing with Horizon. Like, we don't need that. We got it on PS4. The PS4 version is still pretty good looking.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't see why it's needed. And even Dead Space, the original Dead Space trilogy is, 2 console generations old, but I still think they hold up pretty well. I would much rather have seen another iteration in that series.
Which we're kind of getting with the Castillo Protocol?
Callisto Protocol?
Callisto. Thank you. Damn.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's just more of a spiritual successor than anything.
But that's as close to a recent Dead Space outside of the remake. And it looks good.
Yeah, it looks fine. I'm interested to try it, but I just don't think we need all these remakes. There's so many beloved series out there that don't need necessarily a remake, but another entry in the series.
Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. I would much rather for there to be a new IP and it falls short than replaying something I've played before. Like I know Days Gone didn't perform as well as Sony was hoping, so they pulled the plug on the sequel. But I've heard really good things about that game and the survival mechanics in that, and like the horrors that are in the thousands at a time is supposed to be like really good, and how you plan your approach to take them out. Give me something like that.
I think this podcast has kind of, I don't know, it maybe shown me that a lot of games that didn't get a ton of fanfare, got brushed aside, are actually way better than they ever got credit for. Like Ghostwire Tokyo is one. That was just kind of a blip on the radar. But it was one of my favorite games of the entire year.
Oh, absolutely. It was so good.
Yeah. I loved that game. I legitimately, if I had more free time, let's say I had like a week off of work or something, I'd go back through and play all the side missions and stuff. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just go ahead and let's start our topic tonight. Segue. Mega Man 11. This is a game developed by Capcom and released in 2018. You can beat this in about 5 hours or more if you're not good at it, like yours truly here.
I think I beat it in less. I beat it in like 3.
Okay, so 3 to 5 hours, and you can get this for Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and Amazon Luna, which I have never heard of.
It's their streaming service.
Is that doing better than Stadia?
I don't actually know.
I have never heard of that. So
it's got a pretty cool controller you can get.
Oh yeah, well good. So the story is when Dr. Wily barges into Dr. Light's lab and tells Light that he has perfected the double gear system, a piece of technology that leads to a falling out. Wily kidnaps the robots to use for his own plans. And it's up to Mega Man to save them and defeat Dr. Wily. So this is my first Mega Man game. I have never played the Mega Man or any of the previous Mega Man games before because one, we didn't really have a Nintendo to Super Nintendo growing up, or a PC. I'm not sure what
it was on PS1. As well.
I never played that because I mostly just had that rotation of the Tony Hawk games and Rugrats Search for Reptar. So never really had a chance to play these games. And so when you suggested it, I was like, you know what, cool. This is going to be exciting. So at first glance, the game looks really, really good. It is. It's kind of this
2.5D.
Yeah, 2.5D with super like colorful and really tight and responsive controls as a game like this should be.
It's exactly how you would want a modern Mega Man to look.
And the different abilities that you get throughout the game by defeating bosses, which, to my knowledge, that's kind of like the main thing of Mega Man is getting these different abilities, right?
Yeah. You defeat the different robot bosses on each level, and you gain their abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about this and many of the other games in the franchise is each ability has its own its own use per se. So if you get, I'm just gonna throw one out there, you get the bouncy ball characters. I forget that character's name, but
Bounce Man.
Bounce Man. Yeah, there you go.
It's always like adjective man.
Yeah. You get Bounce Man's ability, so you can shoot multiple little bouncy balls everywhere. That's actually the electric guy's weakness. So, and then the electric guy's ability that you get is another character's weakness. So you're really, the thing is, after you beat the first one of the characters, which is probably going to be your hardest experience because you have no additional abilities, you can then find the weakness or the character that is weak against your ability you just unlocked and kind of go 1-to-1-to-1 and find the character you need to beat next.
Yeah. And so, and it's really cool because you can go back and play these levels again for like better results.
Yeah.
So this game is really good about not tying you down, or I'm sorry, not railroading you in a certain direction.
Yeah, you can kind of make your own choices for a lot of the game.
And what's really cool about these different abilities is that, as you mentioned, there's different approaches that you can take to these levels with these abilities, which I always like that a lot. That's why I like the Souls games. Is I will say though, Blockman's ability is so overpowered.
Yeah, it's really only bad against characters that can only be hit from the front, or if characters get really up close to you, it becomes kind of useless because it shoots out in front of you and drops like 4 blocks or whatever.
It does a lot of damage, though.
Yeah, it's good at clearing out aerial enemies. You just broom, 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 knock them all out.
A newcomer of the series, though, is this double gear system that I outlined in the story. What this is you press the Z and R buttons on the Switch. I'm pretty sure it's L1 R1 for PlayStation, left and right bumper for Xbox. And you have one that makes your abilities more powerful, and then you have another one that slows down time. And you can hit both to kind of have this like super ability.
Yeah.
And the game really wants you to use the double gear system, especially with some of these really quick bosses like the Electric Man. He is extremely fast, and in order for you to even get a hit on him, you're strongly encouraged to slow down time.
Yeah, and some of the bosses too, they have like one little brief window where you can hit them, and then they'll dodge or move around or shoot a bunch of attacks at you. So you have a very small window to do damage, and in that one you want to use the powered gear set where you can hit them really hard so that one hit you do really counts. So that's kind of the point to that. And also on the levels where the platform becomes really tight and it's very like time sensitive to hop to different levels or to avoid different obstacles, I loved slowing down time to be able to like traverse those without getting absolutely wrecked.
We'll kind of dive deeper into that later on. One thing that I liked about this is because I'm new to the Mega Man series, this game has a lot of difficulty options and accommodates for people who are new to the series. So they have a newcomer mode, which you have unlimited lives, you take less damage, and you have like infinite like pit birds. I'm not sure what it's called in the game, so I just call them pit birds in the notes. If you were to fall down a pit, this little robot bird swoops in, picks you up, and you can kind of guide him for a short amount of time to a platform, and you can continue. In any other difficulty modes, you can buy these from the store. And there's also spike boots as well. I'm not sure what they're called either, where spikes won't kill you instantly.
Yeah,
and you have
used
infinite.
to be if you stepped on them, it was just an instant boom,
Yeah.
dead.
And you have infinite use of these, so it's really really good in kind of having new players warm up to the flow of this game.
Oh, honestly, it's even good for people who've been away from the series for a while. Because the
Mhm.
last one I played was Mega Man 8 on the PS1. And I'm going to be honest, man, I forgot how challenging Mega Man games were. Or maybe as kids tend to be, you have more time so you can get better at things and you don't get as discouraged as easily from games because this one felt so much harder than the ones I grew up playing.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult for me. I got I got frustrated at this game quite a bit, more frustrated than I would usually get at like any kind of Souls game, because I generally like hard games. They don't really bother me. However, Mega Man is kind of in this category where the difficulty comes from like basically twitch reflexes. Like you need to be very quick, and you need to be able to read that power level very quick and respond very quick. While there is some of that twitchy reflexes in like Souls games, like the boss, I'm going through another playthrough with Elden Ring, and I just defeated Godric the Grafted, and he has some attacks that are very quick that you need to roll very, very quickly a couple times. But generally when it comes to like those Souls games, they're more methodical and slower paced, where you have to read these patterns and roll at the right time. Mega Man, even though these bosses have attack patterns, they're very quick, one after another.
Yes. And some of them I'm like, I don't know how you would take no hits.
And I think that's what the double gear system is for, is you can slow down time. I had to use the speed boost in order to even have any sort of concept of what the boss is doing.
There's one of them that even with the slow down time ability, or I guess the speed boost, whatever you want to call it, but like it felt like a slow down time mechanic.
Yeah.
But one of the bosses you have to fight after all the main ones and right before Dr. Wily is this yellow one, this big giant yellow obelisk basically with one eye. And he's one of the enemies where you only get like one chance to hit him right in the eye, but he turns into particles that go like two across the screen and will hit you. And even if you slow down time, I couldn't avoid getting hit by at least a couple of those. And then he turns himself to a bunch of small little yellow robots and goes up and down like in a big wave. And I couldn't avoid getting hit at least once from those too. I pretty much had to rely on using the power ability and hitting him in the eye with that to kind of knock his health down, or I was going to die. And I had to use some of my health things that I had gathered along the way to beat him.
Yeah. This is really funny. I got so frustrated at this game, but I kept wanting to come back to it because the game in the moment is a lot of fun to play. And I was thinking about this today, but you being able to switch abilities really reminded me when we played Helmut, the Badass from Hell, with this roguelite where you have these 4 different builds that you can have, and you can go through these levels with 4 different builds and switch freely depending on the situation, and how Helmut didn't really give you that ability. Mega Man, however, does. It reminded me how disappointing Helmut was, because you can clearly do it and do it right. Mega Man is the prime example of that.
Yeah. I think to its credit, there's some... When I played this game, I picked out some things that I loved about the game and things that I didn't like as much about the game, so things that didn't age as well for the Mega Man franchise. And so what I really liked was, as you mentioned before, I think the art style is perfect for this kind of game. This is exactly what a modern Mega Man side-scrolling game would look like. And what I also liked was the variety of abilities. I feel like all of the abilities felt different enough and had different enough uses to them that I went through and I used them as much as possible. I felt the Acid Man ability, and I know you mentioned this to me privately, that the Acid Man ability kind of sucked. And I think the reason it sucked was because you basically have to double click to use that ability. Clicking once puts a little acid shield, and then another click lets you shoot like a 3-shot burst of acid.
What's really funny is that I felt like that shield didn't even protect you from damage all that much.
It's only projectiles, and not every projectile either.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have this mentioned in the notes. I felt the tutorials for these new abilities were unclear. Like, a lot of them were very unclear. With Blast Man, I didn't like. It gave you the instructions of how to shoot and detonate your bombs. It just said L, like left stick, and then Y. It didn't really tell you that you have to go down on the left thumbstick, and then press Y. I was clicking it.
Yeah. And you bring it to a good point here. One of the things I didn't like about this game, I thought the controls at times were a bit confusing, and I found myself hitting the wrong buttons a lot.
All the time for me.
Like, I would end up swapping abilities instead of doing my gear ability by accident because they're right up there by each other on the Joy-Cons. This is where I think playing with like a bigger controller, like a Pro controller, would have been better for me.
Probably.
Also, there's such a variety of controls. So you get your different abilities that all work differently. So they all have different functions how they work. And then you have your 2 gear abilities. Then you have your slide mechanic,
which I totally forgot about, by the way, like early on.
Oh yeah. And then you can call in rush for 2 things. There's Y and B on the Joy-Cons, and one of them is a springboard, so he comes out and you can use him to bounce off of to get to higher obstacles. And then the other is you can get on him and ride him like a hoverboard across the screen. And I found myself like in the heat of the moment, because it's a very twitchy kind of game,
right?
Clicking the wrong ones up there all the time and botching a situation.
I am so glad I am not the only person, I'm so glad I'm not the only person that had that issue. Whenever I would try to do something, I would like summon rush, or I would accidentally hit the wrong gear. It was like this. I appreciate how deep the controls are for this game, but they didn't stick that well in my mind. Even 3 or 4 hours in, I was still doing it wrong.
Yeah. And it's very easy to do. And I know that you thought the controls were fairly tight, and I would agree to an extent. I think that the jump is not as tight as it should be because...
Oh, no. Thank you for bringing that up.
The jump is not really as pressure sensitive as you would want. So, for instance, if there's a little hovering enemy flying towards me, a lot of times those enemies would hover into what I called my blind spot, where no matter what height I jumped at, I could not hit them because my character either jumped a little too high or a little too low, and I couldn't hit them. So they just kept coming straight at me and would just screen right into me because I couldn't hit them. And that was irritating.
Those I think I know what enemies you're talking about. Like the little yellow ones.
Yes, the little yellow like helicopter-y looking guys.
Those things pissed me off so much because
they keep respawning.
They keep respawning, and so, which leads me to another point I forgot to mention, is that this game really, it feels like it punishes you for moving slowly because of these respawning enemies. And as I mentioned before, I'm more of a go to the next room, assess the situation, plan out the strategy of what I want to do, and then execute.
So you probably like Katana Zero more because you could really do that. Game.
I really enjoyed Katana Zero.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite games this year.
And that's one of the reasons why I think Hotline Miami will be a good game too.
Yeah, I think we'll like that if we play that.
Because that game is hard too, but Mega Man is not that kind of game. And so I came away from this game more frustrated than I wanted it to be.
Okay.
And that's just me. Like, I want to like this game. And I have no issues with Mega Man as a character or the franchise. I just don't think this kind of difficult game is for me.
I could see that. For me, I was frustrated trying to beat the first level. I went with fighting Blockman first.
Same here.
And I found that to be very challenging. However, after I defeated Blockman, I thought the game got a lot easier. I will say there were a few platforming sections on the various levels that tripped me up, and I would die a couple times on that or something. But I thought overall, once you got the abilities, it was a lot easier to take out the enemies, and it was a lot easier to take out the bosses. Like, usually I could take the bosses out in like 10 seconds.
Oh, nice.
Because you have to play to their weaknesses. And once you figure out what that boss's weakness is, boom, you can knock them out in 2 to 3 hits. If on the lower difficulty settings. And to be transparent, I did not play on the higher difficulty settings. I was by no means ready to do that. I played on both the lowest and then the one above that difficulty. And those were better for me.
Good.
So, yeah, I mean, I could see why it would scare people away, especially it doesn't make a good first impression because I kind of wish they would hold your hand a little bit through like one level and then, take the reins off then. Because somebody jumping just into this series, trying to play through one of the first levels, getting their ass kicked because A, they don't have any powers, and B, they don't understand like how the game really works yet, they're going to get frustrated with it. And I could see that.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it. I totally get it.
Overall, like, I don't want to rate this game low because I don't consider that fair. I would maybe give this a 6 because I enjoyed playing this game. It's just not for me.
That's fair. I mulled it over for a while we were talking, and I wanted to say 8 initially, but I think after talking through some of the things I didn't like about it, I'd probably drop it to like a 7.5. There's a lot of fun to be had in it, and you can have a lot of fun with the different abilities. I know I did, but at the same time, I am very aware of things that could be better in it.
Right. Next week we'll be discussing a game called Maquette. For a long time I thought it was Marquette, but there's no Q in it or no R in it.
Yeah,
it's like Maquette.
Yeah, I'm excited to try that one. I think that game didn't get a lot of buzz, but
the only thing I know about it is that it was a free PS5 game around the time the PS5 came out.
Yeah. Oh, and I did want to say this because I know we talked about Ghostwire Tokyo last time, but the day after the podcast, I finished that game. And get this, played through the entire game, never died once.
Oh, look at you.
I was shocked. By the time I got to the final, last, 2 missions or something, I was like, oh my God, I haven't died yet. And I was like, can I keep this going? And so I'm like doing my damnedest not to die the entire time. And it got pretty close a couple times, but I never died.
Thank God for that quick heal, huh?
Oh yeah. And then all the different abilities you can stack.
Right.
But I had a great time with that game.
I gotta get you to play some Elden Ring.
Maybe someday. I do have that game, but that's kind of one of those. I'm gonna have to be in a good headspace for that.
Well, and you can always have me to kind of show you the ropes too.
Oh, I always have you anyway.
Ooh.
Do we want to give a little brief explanation of how the rest of the podcast for the upcoming months are going to be, or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So, November will be normal for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have our games every week. Connor and I are in discussions of having a temporary replacement for Let's Get Physical for anyone who wants like some kind of little sub segment of our show. Connor, you thought of the idea, so I'll let you go ahead and take the reins on this one.
Yeah, and so this idea is not set in stone, so if we don't end up going through with it, that's just what it is.
It's just an idea.
It could be more time-consuming than we want, but on paper it doesn't seem this way. So my idea was we do a Pokemon play-along, and by that I mean Kale and I will watch a handful of episodes of the anime a week. I'm still trying to determine a good number where we're still making a good enough progress and we're not playing one game for an entire year. It seems like 7 episodes a week is a good spot. And at 20 minutes a piece per episode, that's really not a huge time commitment.
No.
That's like, if you watch one 20-minute episode a day, that's not very much. And when I did a breakdown, I kind of went through the episodes for the first season. I found out that the Ash doesn't move very fast. So at most,
Ash is a terrible Pokemon trainer.
Yeah, at most you're beating maybe 1 gym a week, and that's also not very bad. You're moving like 1 or 2 routes in the game per week, so it's not a lot. But what we want to do is go through the Pokemon series, and every time we're in a new region, we will start a game that is in that region. So, for example, if we start with Season 1, which is the Indigo League, we would start in the Kanto region. And the games that are in the Kanto region are Red, Blue, Yellow. There is Leaf Green, Fire Red, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee. All of those are in the Kanto region. So, essentially, the story is about the same. You're beating the same gym leaders. You're fighting the same Elite Four. And I wanted to institute 2 sets of rules. Kale has not played... I don't think you've played any Pokemon game to completion, have you?
No.
Okay. And then I have played every Pokemon game to completion, minus Arceus. I know I still need to beat that one. It's on my to-do list for this month. But the rules would be this. I have to follow in Ash's footsteps along the way. Every time Ash catches a Pokemon. So let's say in the first game he catches a Pidgeotto. I have to catch a Pidgeotto. If he goes to a gym and only uses his Pikachu and a Pidgeotto, I can only use my Pikachu and a Pidgeotto. If he releases one of his Pokemon, which he does on numerous occasions in the first season, I have to take those out of my box and move them into a box that I'm going to title Released. And the only reason I'm doing that is there are times in the show, I know for a fact, where he lets a Pokemon go, and then later on in the series, that Pokemon comes back, and I want to be able to pull that back with me. And essentially, I just have to mirror what he does through the entire game and try to beat the gyms using the resources that he had.
Because you like pain.
I do love pain. And then, ideally, I need to figure out the right mix of games for me to do this. I think I should be able to move my Pokemon from game to game to game. So in theory, if I started with a Pikachu and the first game we start with, that same Pikachu will be in the last game we end with. So that's my rules.
I can't wait for you to have to level up your Charizard so fast to where it doesn't listen to you.
Yeah, I think when I scaled it out to 7 episodes a week, I'm going to have to evolve it to a Charmeleon and then a Charizard in the same week, I think. So that's going to be fun. But your rules will be different. Your rules will be Ash caught a Pokemon this episode. That means you have to catch a Pokemon. It can be any Pokemon. But we need to find a way to denote what it is. So let's say he catches a Pidgeotto. This doesn't really happen, but he catches a Pidgeotto, and 6 episodes later, he releases that Pidgeotto. And you, instead, caught a Spearow. And 6 episodes later, you're going to have to get rid of that Spearow. So you kind of have to follow his rules, but you at the same time can build your own team the way
I have
you want.
a bit more freedom than you do because you're
Yes.
you're more familiar with these games than I am.
So we would have the same number of Pokemon, but you can raise them the way you want and use them the way you want in battles, whereas I have to follow his rules.
Man.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
What do you think of this? And then
This is gonna be painful.
so how the
For you,
podcast
mostly.
I imagine going is we come in and we will have 7 episodes to discuss each week, and as we are playing the game to mirror them, we will talk about what happened in the anime and then our experience trying to do those things. So like let's say
It would take like 15 minutes to talk about it, maybe less even.
yeah, let's say Ash goes to Mount Moon one episode, and it's not a big deal for him. Oh, he sees the Clefairy, whatever. But instead, I'm like, yeah, I had to fight through 300 Zubats to get through this cave, and it was absolute hell, and I couldn't find this Pokemon for 3 hours that he wanted me to find. So for me, it'll be pain. For you, it's just like, oh, yeah, I just caught a Zubat in the cave, and I was good to go.
Hey, I'm just imagining a situation was like, yeah, to fight 300 Zubats. What about you, Kale? Oh, I caught 300 Zubats.
The real challenge that I have seen already is the first gym that Ash faces in the anime already breaks the rules of Pokemon because he uses a Pikachu against a Geodude and an Onix. Electricity doesn't work on Onix or Geodude. So my only thing that I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to level up Pikachu enough where he has an attack that I can knock out an Onix with, but I'm pretty sure Onix uses Harden, which increases his defense.
Giggity.
So it's gonna be hell.
Mm.
It's gonna be hell for me.
Yeah. So that's basically our idea for to replace Let's Get Physical for a while. Anyone who is willing, who likes that idea, please let us know in the comments, and maybe we can pull the trigger on it. For December is going to be a little bit different. The first week will probably be normal. We'll talk about a game. But then the last 3 weeks of December, Connor and I decided we're going to kind of take a break from playing games in a schedule to kind of catch up on the games that we want to play. And so we're going to talk about the top 10 games that we enjoyed on the show, bottom 10 games on the show, and just like games that we're looking forward to playing in 2023, whether we play them for the show or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because it's the holiday season, it's one of the most stressful times of the year. We don't want to add more stress to that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we figured it might be fun, lighthearted, and maybe a way for you guys to get involved. Whoever listened to our episodes, you can either message me on Twitter and with the name of a game that we talked about this year and like your comments on the game. We can read it for us, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so.
To see where we ranked our games. Like, I think it's pretty clear where Ghostwire Tokyo is going to be ranked. It's going to be ranked top 5 for sure.
So are we going to do a top games we played for the podcast this year or just in general?
I went back and forth with it, and I think it would lead to better discussion if we talked about the games that we talked about on the show, if possible.
Yeah.
If by some chance, because we've played over 20 games.
Yeah.
That we can talk about. So that can lead from the top and bottom 10. It probably lead to better discussion if we talked about games that we played for the show.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm down for that.
But I think that will just about do it, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. Or if you don't like the show, tell your friends. Maybe they'll like it. We also have a merch store, which will be linked down in the description. And that will pretty much do it for us. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.